Good morning, Kerry and Raven. And good morning, everyone else. We are just sitting down to talk a little bit about our We Happy Few rehearsal structure and internal structures and the things that we think we're doing really, really well. So Raven, Kerry, who would like to start?
I just love the way you phrased that. It sounds like a very humble brag, but I think coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I do use the term coming out of it very loosely. We are in a spot where Dr. Fauci has said the pandemic is over, but we all still know it is quite present in our lives. Um, this is our first show back as a live theater company, our first full production, Desdemona, a play about a handkerchief. It's going up in the end of May. And I think it was really important to us that we don't continue to do theater the same way we were, right? We were one of the many theaters that got shut down mid-March in 2020. Gosh, how much time has passed in 2020? Um, and a realization that if we went back to doing things exactly the same way, that we could potentially have that happen again. Like there was no safety net holding us up.
Well, this was really important. And when we were talking about doing a show, uh, we were all just very concerned about making sure that everybody felt safe. I I had a baby during the pandemic, and she's almost 2 now, but she's still not eligible for a vaccine. And so, that has been top of mind. My husband and I have not been, out and about and, doing a lot of things, even since we've gotten vaccinated and boosted and everything like that. Um, our kid has still never seen the inside of a grocery store. She thinks that groceries just show up. um, so, I wanted to make sure that we were as safe as absolutely possible. And so when Kerry and I were talking about this, we were talking about, sort of what equity is asking of theaters, even though we're not an equity theater. Like that was a good a good model and a good, just source of information of like, okay, how can we do this safely? So, we have we're doing regular testing. People that are not acting on stage are masked during rehearsals. We're also limiting the amount of people in the rehearsal room. So things like our production meetings have been virtual, and we've had designers Zoom in to rehearsal and watch rehearsal like that. So some of that has been, I think, really nice and really crucial. Just to make sure that everybody is feeling safe. If anybody is like, oh, I don't know, I'm a little scratchy today, or, somebody left work early and they were coughing, so I'm going to keep my mask on today. That's been great. We've been very up and up. And I think that, one of the things that's actually really helpful and that we were very specific when we chose the show is that it's a 3-person show. And so the 3 of us that are in the show can really check in and be super open and honest and, and vulnerable with each other about how we're doing.
One of the things that was really important too in helping us feel safe, but also helping to, I don't know, support what we're trying to put out as a new mentality, which is the show doesn't have to go on mentality,
Mhm.
is we have set up our rehearsals so that they're running over a much longer period of time. We're rehearsing only a couple times a week, like 2 or 3 times a week until we get up to tech, so that if someone does get sick, we can cancel rehearsal until they get a negative test, right? And then we're not scrambling and panicking because we have all this lost rehearsal time. We actually had a big outbreak of a cold, not COVID, thank goodness, but like a cold that went around the cast about a week ago, and we canceled a week of rehearsals, and we only lost 2 rehearsals. And there is still, with any lost time, this feeling of like, okay, I just want to make sure we're still on track, but we didn't sweat it. It was really easy to be able to say like, okay, we're all testing negative so far, but we want to make sure that that's still what's happening and that we're still feeling safe with this. So we don't have to meet. We can say maybe not, and we'll still be okay. We've
Yeah.
built a bunch of extra time into the actual show schedule too. Normally we do 16 shows. We run Wednesday through Saturday, and there's just not a lot of extra room in that for an extension, for canceled performances, for anything. Theater Washington and Helen Hayes has been really generous with the amount of performances that they require for Helen Hayes eligibility. Normally it's 16 shows, but they bumped it down to 10. So we've been able to do is we've scheduled 12 shows, and we've asked the actors once a week to hold 1 extra day. So if we need to cancel a week of performances because of an outbreak, then we'll just throw a couple of extra performances on near the end. And our whole acting staff has been really generous in being like, that's not an unreasonable ask. We can do that. We can make that happen. And what we're hoping is that that'll create a situation too where no one feels like they need to power through a show when they're not feeling well, that they actually have the ownership to say, I don't know that this is a good idea for me now, and that we'll be able to back them up without any consequence to the show at all, which is kind of a nice idea.
Mm-hmm.
And this long burn rehearsal process that we have built Desdemona around, and we're sort of looking at that for our shows in the future, that also has really come in handy for you specifically, Kerry, because you have something very important happening in your life prior to the show opening, but not prior to rehearsals being over.
Yeah, this is, I'm not gonna lie, the idea of setting up a show that was very conducive to if someone got sick has been very conducive to both Raven and myself. I am 8 months pregnant, and I'm actually scheduled to, my due date is before the show opens, which sounds madness. I'm the director. Thank goodness I'm not an actor in it, right? That would be impossible. But the idea is, as we were planning this in advance, like no one could know in what physical shape I'd be at this time, whether I'd be able to go to rehearsals or feeling well enough to do anything. So there was a bit of a gamble there. But one of the things that helped was that we were only rehearsing a couple times a week. So that's actually been a really leisurely schedule for myself to be like, yeah, 2 or 3 nights a week for a couple of hours, no big deal. We're not doing long Saturdays or all day Sundays. So I've been wonderfully not tired out, which is great. And it is possible that I have a baby before this show goes up. And it is amazing to me the power of artistic collaboration. No one in the company has been concerned about that.
Mm-mm. Well, and Kerry, just to from my perspective on this, put this in, you said, you just put in, oh, it was a bit of a gamble because we didn't know what kind of physical shape I'd be in. And I'm like, well, yes and no. I mean, we also thought about this, right? Like we knew full well that you were going to have a baby, possibly before likely before the show actually opens. And so, when we were talking about doing this and making this happen, it was also like, okay, so we need an assistant director or co-director that is enrolled in taking over the show and picking it up wherever, I mean, goodness gracious, like here we are, we're just a couple of weeks now to opening and your due date here. And it's like, you're still in it. And, she could, Amelia has been amazing and she can pick it up wherever, right? And we're kind of in a place collaboratively too, that we've all been on board and we could all pick it up, knowing your vision and creating from there. But that's also the kind of company that we are, right? We are creative. The director is sort of the captain of the ship, if you will, but somebody else can step in and we can all work together and kind of have been throughout. So not as big a gamble as perhaps,
as it
some
sounds
other
like on paper. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the really beautiful thing. And I think that we have set up a world where I don't want to say the director is the least important person in the room, but in some ways is, as far as functionality, right? Like my job is facilitating and being able to see the big picture and all of this stuff, but all of our artists are so involved in all of the creative and artistic making decisions. I think that's been something that's been really important in our rehearsal rooms. So like knowing that Raven is in every rehearsal as an actor, knowing we have 2 other company members as actors, we have a producer who is zooming in, Deborah Crabb, who's giving me notes to be an extra outside eye. We have our amazing assistant director Amelia. We've got stage managers. Like we're in such a good spot as far as how many creative minds who understand what's going forward. And the designers we have as well are all designers we've worked with before, or designers we have a close personal relationship for, who understand exactly what's happening and are very willing to say like, yes, okay, like maybe we get our designs to you a little early. Maybe we have the costume parade before Tech Week. Maybe we do these things to help ensure that we have a successful show going forward, so that you can sign off on things, Kerry, but then if you're not there later and there's adjustments, like we already know what the big picture is. And that's been really, really nice. This has been such a relaxed but fulfilling rehearsal process that even in a non-COVID time, it's something that I wouldn't mind utilizing again. I will say, even if it wasn't for the pregnancy, like while we were in quarantine, the idea of going to Saturday and Sunday and every evening rehearsals, like, whew.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think that we as a society are sort of just leaning away from that, like very, very structured. We do this every single night. It is like this because it's just tiring. Mm-hmm. And especially when, people have to have other things going on during the day. And I think that structure that we have built to really be artist focused and artist central is essential to what has made this process so lovely. And I think going forward is definitely going to be something that we'll build upon and use in our future productions.
So we're a small theater company. I would love to say that we were in a place where actors could make We Happy Few their full-time job, but we're not. That's not who we are right now. And so requiring that of actors, because that's been the standard theater model for so long, is actually a really big ask. Like we're working really hard at increasing our pay and working towards a minimum wage. It's going to be a little bit before we get there, but until we get there, we can't make that ask of our artists. Like we need to find ways that this can be a part of their lives, but not their whole life. And this has been a really nice way to do it, because most people do have full-time jobs or families, which I think that's been an interesting part of this too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's something that we've been talking about at We Happy Few for a little bit, of, how can we be more inclusive for parents? I had a conversation with a friend, I don't know, pre-pandemic, so years and years ago now, but it actually was maybe 5 years or so ago. Long story short, he was talking about how he can never have kids because he's an actor and this is his career and they don't go together. And I thought, how many people, are still kind of in that sacrifice place of I've got to put my career on hold in order to do this thing in my life, or goodness, acting and theater is a lot about scarcity and struggle. Like the mentality in it is, and the culture in it is about that. And the idea that to start a family, it's going to lead to some sort of sacrifice or struggle. It shouldn't be that. And when I had my daughter, I was not sure when or if I would come back to theater. And when Kerry started talking about this and was like, and I want you to audition, I was like, maybe somebody else. And it took me a minute, but I think, Kerry, what you said to me was, Raven, we want to be this company that is able to work with parents of all sorts, all kids, but like young kids too, right? And we've got to start practicing. And you're a great person to practice with. I was like, yeah, you're right. And the slow burn rehearsal has been really helpful for that, because I do what I do and I have support at home, and Kiernan's been amazing and has been on childcare kind of from the beginning. But I work full time from home. I'm a mom. I'm exhausted at the end of the day, and then I'm going to rehearsal. So to be able to do that just a couple of times a week and kind of get back into it. And I will tell you what, those first couple of weeks of rehearsal, like we'd hit 8:30 and I'd be like, I am done. I cannot. So it did take some practice to get back into it. And some things are a little bit harder for me than they used to be. Learning lines has actually been harder than it ever was before. I was somebody that could do the scene twice and I got it, right? And not a problem. And now it's taking work. It's taking, all right, I've got to find these pockets outside of rehearsal and all of that. And it's just a different way. And I've got to have a lot of compassion with myself. But I feel very fortunate in what we've built too, that I can also be transparent about where I am. And I can get support around it. And I mean, goodness gracious, like we've got a couple of rehearsals where rehearsal overlaps with my husband's work. And so we need babysitters. And so, people are helping out to, Rachel's coming over, next week to babysit while I go to rehearsal and my husband's at work. And so finding those places that we can support parents and we can actually support this to happen, I think has been really, really important and crucial to us moving forward too.
I really appreciate how transparent you've been about what you need to make this happen to Raven. Like, you do have a good support system within your family for childcare, but we put on the rehearsal schedule like early on, like, okay, these are the days that we've scheduled rehearsal that Raven needs childcare. And like half of those we've been able to eliminate and rehearse other days. And then the other half, it has been kind of an open source. We've put out a call to the company who's available, who would like to come. And one of the days we ended up canceling rehearsal because my husband was coming over to babysit, but he caught the cold that was going around. And we're like, nope, not worth it. Not worth it. Can't do it. And it was fine. Losing that rehearsal is not breaking the show. And I'm really excited to kind of see how we can continue to work with parents to make that happen. Because I really like this idea that we can create and provide, at least a minimum structure to help support that at home, because not everyone does have the amount of childcare support that could make going to work like this possible at all.
Absolutely. Well, ladies, thank you so much for your time this morning, and excited for the show.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.